Welcome to the Players Ball podcast for AT Aliens by AT Aliens. Number one sports podcast in Stankonia. I'm your host, Alex the Great. I'm joined by my co-host, MB. We want to thank all of you watchers. We see our views are going up, so we appreciate y'all. Keep watching. We'll keep providing some quality content. Comment more if we can ask you to do anything. Give us some direction. I think we do a good enough job finding our own way. But if there are things that you want us to add to our topics of discussion, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll throw them on the next episode. Like and subscribe.
Let's get this
MB,
thing up.
How's it going, man? Yeah, to the moon, man.
Let's get up to 50 subscribers. That's the benchmark. Help us get there.
Big 5-0. I like that. That's a honorable goal.
But I'm doing well, man. I'm glad to be back. It was nice to get away for a week. But I'm happy to be back talking sports with you, doing the pod. You know, we took a week off, resting, ready to go.
Resting and ready to go, man. Spring break. Did you have any you got any interesting spring break occurrences outside of the water being cold? You told me that offline.
No, I mean, it was a good time to watch some sports, you know, some March Madness, Final Four, you know, Elite Eight action going on, Braves season opener and all that getting kicked off. So it was a good time to spend with the family and got some good sports watching in.
How'd your bracket end up?
I mean, I won our group. You know, I
Did you really?
I picked the champion. I picked the
UConn.
Yeah, and I picked the matchup too, so I had both Purdue and UConn in the final. I did not get the other two Final Four participants correct, but
nor did I. I don't think anyone did. So you were watching some sports down there. I know you saw my guy. We've been talking about him. He's our guy now. The next Atlanta Hawk, Mr. Zach Edey. Dominant performance throughout the tournament. What a talent. I think he's still kind of being shat upon, if you will, like even during the final game or the semifinal. Grant Hill was saying he called him pedestrian. I was like, oh man, Grant, like how can you? I don't get it, right? The league has changed quite a bit, but nothing like a serviceable big man. There was a picture of him next to Shaq, and he was looking down on him. And Shaq is a massive man, but he's looking down on Shaq. He's not this little string bean like a Bol or a Wemby, which, you know, Wemby's a whole different animal, alien. Have you seen this Nike logo?
No, I haven't.
You should check it out. It's an alien. Surprise.
Yeah, man. Did you watch any of the game on Monday night, the final?
Yeah.
Man, that first half,
yeah,
Edey was just eating them boys up. I think he had, at one point, 11 out of the 15 or 16 points that Purdue had scored. And I was really interested because you got to see the Star Trek Klingon versus Edey. And Edey was the more dominant of the two, and it was very apparent early on. And you know, that to me is like the true measuring stick when you go up against someone that's kind of your size. It's a little bit tougher matchup. How are you going to fare? And you know, that hook shot is absolutely lethal.
But yeah, 100%. He, I mean, it didn't get a whole lot better for the rest of Purdue, right? He finished with 37 and they had 60 points. So, I mean, they were. I think the coach, Hurley, he was saying that was their game plan. He was going to let Zach eat and just stop everybody else. Stop the threes specifically.
So I heard something, and I don't know why, like, this resonated with me, you know, recently, but I had never really thought of it. And that's if you're predominantly a three shooting team, and you can shoot the ball 40%, you know, making 40% of your threes. So that's 4 out of every 10. That's 12 points, right? if you just have a 10 shot sample size, you made 4 out of 10. He scored 12 points. A team that's going to dominate the paint has to shoot 60% just to tie you. So, twos, 6
trading
out of
twos for
10.
threes.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, and it does make a lot of sense why the game has kind of evolved into a predominantly 3 shooting league, because you don't have to be as efficient and you still put up a lot more points. So
that's Quinn Snyder's whole philosophy, right? Like, shoot as many threes as possible. Everyone shoot them. So I'm sure if he has anything to say about it, maybe Zach Edey won't be a Hawk. But I think he had Rudy Gobert for a long time. So let me change that. Like, Rudy Gobert is not shooting threes. He's there for one job and one job only.
But I
Defense, lock down the paint.
I think it's a good strategy, but you have to be able to get that 40% mark, because asking your opponent to shoot 60% from the floor is a much taller ask than, if you're only 30% from the 3, they only have to, 50% and they're winning, right?
40% from behind the arc is a tall order. I know
It
that there are
is.
teams that can do it, but that's like super special. I don't know how many teams in the NBA right now are shooting above 40. I would imagine next to none.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly is a tall order, but you're not just shooting threes, right? Like, it's a combination of 2s and 3s getting shot. So that math is just an illustration of, how dominant or how difficult it could be to match up against a, 30 plus 30 to 40%, 3 shooting team. So. I don't know. It just kind of, changes my perspective a little bit on, like, the likes of a Zach Edey. I think he would be dominant, in a Hawks uniform. We've missed having a dominant person in the paint for my entire lifetime. It feels like the last time I feel like we had that was Dikembe. No.
No.
And
not today. So one of the great State Farm commercials of all time.
But we were pretty young in
Not
the
a single team in the NBA is shooting above 40.
yeah.
38.8 is the benchmark. There's 4 teams that are doing it. That's really good, right? They are all very successful. The 4 teams that are doing it are the top 2 teams in the West and the number 1 team in the East. So what you're saying is absolutely true. But if you pair that with a dominant center, and he has a great inside-out game, right? He was getting double, triple teamed in every match that he basically played, except UConn. I think they tried to play him straight up as much as they could. But when you get that kind of attention, if you can successfully kick that ball back out, man, you can have a lot of success, especially if you have shooters. The Hawks, we got shooters. Staying with the Hawks, man, Trae Young came back tonight. And we were looking at it together. At the time we were looking, DeJounte Murray was not sidelined for injury, but he also didn't have a single minute played. What is that about? Do you know?
I don't know.
The trade deadline is come and gone, so it's not like they can move him tonight.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just a matter of wanting to get Trae Young some extra minutes. Tonight is the last home game for the Hawks, and then they have 2 or 3 more games remaining for the regular season. So getting him as many minutes as possible is probably in our best interest if we want Trae to be ready to rock and roll for the play-in. That's my
looking
only.
at the starters. Excuse me. Oh, let me get a little water. I actually think you're right. Thinking about that, looking at the other minutes, like there's a lot of people who are, yeah, they started, but like Bogey only played 19 minutes. Clint Capella played 15. Jalen Johnson didn't play at all. They say they put him down as injury, but DeAndre Hunter was on rest. So yeah, that's exactly what it was. They just want to get Trae back in there. He only played 20 minutes. The game's about over.
He had 9 points the last I've seen.
Right now he was at 14 and 11 assists in 20 minutes. I'll give you a guess at what was the Hawks' final record without Trae Young?
I don't know how many games he was out, but I'll go for a
29.
And 29.
You can do win percentage though.
Oh, I'm sorry. There were 29 games.
Play without him, yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go 16 and 13.
14 and 15. A game under 500. I think with him they were like 3 games under 500. There wasn't a whole lot of improvement. I know people got excited about DJ, and they had some really big wins. Like those back-to-back wins over Boston were strong. He had a great showing. I think when I was looking at his stats without Trae, or in the month of March, he was doing like 25 and 11. So it was pretty close to Trae's number, honestly. But I just want the executives to know that this situation is still not tenable, right? We can't continue down this road. I can't even say that I've been watching a ton of basketball because it's not, my team isn't very good. I'm a bit disinterested. Now I'm gonna watch the playoffs because there's some exciting ball coming. I really want to see how these other teams do. Anybody, not to go too far off the Hawks, and then we can move on to the other birds. Anybody in the playoffs that you're interested in watching that you think would be a problem?
I mean, I always enjoy watching. I told you he's my favorite player, but I like watching Giannis. He's sidelined with an injury right now, calf strain. They thought it might have been an Achilles injury, so they dodged the bullet there. So I think the Bucks are definitely interesting to watch. And I mean, ever since we went to that game last year, it's hard not to just want to keep an eye on what Denver's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Joker and Murray. I mean, that combo is pretty lethal. So I'll watch them.
Yeah.
I'll see how the Lakers do, just to hope they lose.
Just hate a little bit. Hate. Dallas is a team that I think is going to. They didn't make it in their first year with Kyrie, but giving Luka Magic a Robin, like he's better than Robin. He's not as good as Luka at this point in his career, but having him, they're going to be. If they're both on, man, they're gonna be hard to beat. They're gonna be a tough out. There are some other teams I'm not afraid of, like Boston. For all the downs that they've had this year, I don't think they're gonna do anything. Take that take to the bank. Lakers, nah. Golden State, nah. I'd be curious to watch Minnesota too. We've talked about Ant-Man on this pod before, so I'd like to see what he can do in the playoffs again. He had a good showing last year, it just wasn't enough. So we'll see if they can gel. I don't even know if Karl Anthony Towns is back, but he would be helpful. But yeah, basketball's it's in a good place, man. It's a lot of stars. We just need the Hawks to catch up to the rest of basketball because we are not in a good place.
Yeah, and I don't ever wish injury upon any person. But
say as a man who's about to wish injury on
no, I'm gonna say if Luka could forget how to play basketball for the playoffs, I would not be mad. Because you know,
Just feels like it's in your face.
I still, my pride wants to win that trade.
Yeah, it's over. My hope was in. I wonder if we got Jalen Johnson with the pick that we traded Cam Reddish for. Nah, I think he was already here. So we got somebody who's not playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost.
I mean, if
But trade the dog. I'm not upset about it.
if DeAndre Hunter ever materialized into a consistent baller, I think we would have won.
Yeah, and he's been playing good ball. There was a point that one of our compatriots made was that they think that he was on a Cal Pitts type situation where he just wasn't quite healthy. Right, he was hurt. He had a great rookie year. Went into sophomore year pretty good. Then he got hurt. And he was back and hurt, back and hurt, back and hurt. And this has been like a longer stretch of him not being hurt. And he's coming back into form. He definitely had a pretty good March, especially coming off the bench. I would have preferred for him to keep doing that, but he started starting again. So we definitely see where that goes, right? If he's a piece that's around, I think there's value, great value that we could potentially take advantage of. Or if he's around and healthy, we can see what he can do. But some changes have to happen, right? So that's it, man. Well,
one final thought there.
Yeah.
I just don't know how long of a leash or how much patience the fan base should have with, he definitely has had a bright March. And if it is a health situation, like, I could understand wanting to give him a little bit more leeway, but I just don't know how much patience we would have there, right? Like, he's had several years to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Do we keep hoping that he turns the corner, or do we just like cut bait and stop loss? But that's just kind of my 2 cents, right? I would love to see him succeed, but I don't know how much I'm willing to continue to wait. If I can get some decent trade value for him now, it's probably the route that I would take.
Got it. Yeah, I'm not too far away from that. Yeah, it wasn't that good a March.
Yeah.
But from one bird to another, the Falcons. We got the draft coming up in 2 weeks, I believe. 2 weeks from tomorrow, actually. And there's a lot of speculation on 8. The most that I've heard is that we're going edge. It's just flip flopping between Jared Verse and help me out, Alabama, Dallas Turner, right? But there has to be other stories out there. What have you heard about 8?
So during our little 1 week hiatus, a lot of the local media, radio, personnel were kind of up in arms with the story that Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot and a lot of the Falcons brass had gone up to Washington or wherever it was held. I'm not certain on that detail, but they went and worked out Michael Penix. And so the general thought process is that Michael Penix is a round 1 guy. And so that must mean the Falcons are interested in Michael Penix at 8. And there's been, I've seen lots of arguments back and forth. Our favorite Squid chimed in and said, he had to be thrown to somebody. Who's to say they weren't out there looking at a wide receiver, Rome Odunze, who there's no confirmation whether he was even there or not, but they had, a couple other wide receiver prospects that they could have been looking at. And so it's just an interesting conversation, I think. Who's to say, if people really do value Michael Penix in the top 10, it could have been a red herring, right? It could have been the Falcons showing interest because they want to create the appearance that they want him at 8 so that they could find someone willing to trade up for him, right? And they could trade back and really get who they're really after, depending on how they value, their board. So I think,
That's interesting. The red herring aspect, specifically, right? Like when you think about the draft, you just think about going and getting. At least me, I think about going and getting the best player available or the best player that fit the team, the biggest need. Um, but there's a lot more gamesmanship that's happening all the time that I just don't really consider that often. I could definitely see that, right? Especially considering that they do have another player that's considered top 10 talent, right? Michael Penix Jr., that big Penix energy, he wasn't even projected in the first round in the early mocks that I was looking at. Now I know he had a hell of a pro day where he was out there looking real fast. And I saw that video of him running. It's like, dang, yeah, he does have the burners. And they were saying as far as deep ball talent, there's no one that's close to him in the draft. But he's old and were the knocks. He's old, and then you told me he had an injury history. Well, it's a little bright. I forgot to turn that back on.
Yeah,
Interesting nonetheless, though, for sure.
he definitely
Especially from
has.
the trade back perspective.
Yeah, he definitely has a pretty extensive injury history that are kind of red flaggish to me. But it was interesting just listening to people talk on the radio, um, and no one really brought up the point that like this could be just a strategy. The only thing I heard outside of, well, if they see him as the best available, then why not draft him? The only other argument I saw was, well, he was out there throwing to somebody, and they could have been looking at other players on the field during that workout. I think that is a possibility, but I think the other legitimate possibility is that it's a red herring, as I mentioned. I don't
Yeah.
think that the Falcons, oh Lord, I hope they don't think that they need to go out and get a quarterback at 8. I'm all
No.
for taking a flyer on a guy in a, later round, third, fourth, fifth plus. But those first 2 picks, they have to be starters. We need
Yeah.
difference makers. Um, the reason why you went out and got Kirk Cousins is because you have invested all this money in offensive talent that you're getting at a bargain right now because they're still on rookie deals, and those
Hmm.
deals expire soon. So your window is closing to maximize their potential at the current value.
Right.
So I don't see any true credence to going out and getting a quarterback at 8. That would be just straight
Yeah.
foolish.
And they haven't spent a ton of money on defense either. All the free agency spending, most of it has been on the offensive side of the ball, right? But Kirk Cousins obviously is the biggest paycheck that was given out. But you got a bunch of wide receivers that came in. Who was it? Darnell Mooney and from 49ers, their tight end. We also got their running
Rondell
back slash who you talking about?
Rondell Moore too.
Rondell Moore was Arizona. Yeah,
Yeah,
another person. But yeah, it was like 5 free agency signings for offense and maybe 2. I know we signed I think we gave Contavious Street some money, and then we brought in another defensive tackle. But they haven't addressed cornerback or edge. So you had to get. I feels like you had to get one of those with those first 2 picks.
I think they did sign 2 defensive backs. One
Mm.
like in the last 48 hours. I forget what his full name is, but last name King, and he played for the
Yeah, I did see
Green
that.
Bay Packers. I don't remember what the corner. is, but I think those were depth picks,
Right.
not starters, right? We need starters at those positions. So I'm 100% with you. We're going edge or we're going DB with 8. That's or I say 8, but with our first pick, I
Yeah.
see a lot of scenarios that we could trade into the teens, and get those guys, get an edge, get a corner, get a safety, whatever.
So the further down we trade, the higher the value that they're going to have to give us in return, right? What if we could do, like, stay in the first round, um, go further down, maybe take a shot at UCLA, Leatu Latu
Yeah, I mean,
towards the end, and then
um,
maybe we get like a third round pick for
Jamie
trading
Duke
back.
is it Jamie Dukes, Dukes and Bell, or
uh,
Carl Dukes?
Carl Dukes.
Yeah, I know
Jamie's
those.
his brother. They're brothers though. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's big on Latu. I'm a little bit UCLA. What do you call it?
Bias.
No, I got a little PTSD, I would say, with
From who?
UCLA, Tacarius or Tack McKinley.
Yeah.
So my faith in those, Pac-12 players
The
is
Bruins.
a
Oh,
big
all the
boo.
Pac-12.
Yeah. Boo.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would, just because of the familiarity and the level of competition that I know they played. I would, if I'm going edge, I'm taking Dallas Turner.
Hmm.
Just, track record.
SEC.
I know each player is an individual, and one person's success does not dictate another person's success. But if you look at certain programs, Alabama being one of them, they've
Hmm.
produced a lot of top defensive talent in the last decade.
Yeah.
And I mean, defensive rookie of the year last year. So
Who is that?
um Texan.
Oh, D-line. Um,
Yeah, edge.
hmm. Anderson. Will Anderson.
Yeah, Will Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know. I mean, there's a lot of anecdote there, but that's just me. Like I've got a lot more faith in him coming out and being a baller day one than I do, even Jared Verse or some of the other names. I'll
Yeah.
say the guy from Michigan. I don't know his name, but he was a stud. He looks the part. Michigan's a
Okay.
big time program, played in a big time conference. I'd feel more comfortable going that direction, but I don't think we'd have to use 8 to get there.
Yeah, no, you definitely trade out of it. I mean, if you're not going versus or forgot it again, Alabama.
Dallas Turner.
If you're not going versus or Turner, you definitely want to trade back, and you can potentially trade back for both of them as well. I heard something interesting on the radio today. There was a former executive, I think he worked for the Giants, that was on the radio show, and he mentioned that he thought that Latu was the best edge in the draft, right? But he understood the other concerns there. But he talked about another Georgia athlete,
Oh,
and
don't even bring this
in an
conversation.
unflattering way. And I hadn't heard anybody talk about Mr. Bauer in that light before. He said that he's good, but not great. The other ones that he talked about were Jags quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He hasn't, Trevor Lawrence is still making a lot of mistakes, if you ask me, right? To be year 4, I don't. He's not. They were saying that he's the generational talent, the next goat, and he don't look like that to me. Not even close. He had that same feeling about Brock Bauer. I can already tell you disagree, but how strongly do you disagree?
Um, so I'm gonna steal some words from Carl Dukes as well. This is an absolutely asinine, idiotic take. And if you actually listen to the audio clip, right, he makes his claim and says, well, Georgia was scheming Brock Bowers open.
Yeah,
That's why he was good. What team doesn't scheme their best player open? Like
the
Brock was
Falcons.
still
Quick answer. Tight end as well. The other point that he said was that Kyle Pitts, to him, as far as the eye test was concerned, looked better than Brock Bowers. So he expected Kyle Pitts to be, well into his success by this time. Obviously, he's not, but
if you actually look at, so I'm going to finish my other thought in a second, but if you look at what Brock Bowers' teammates say about him, they're saying like if you were to pass him on campus, you'd have no idea that he was the player on Saturdays that he was, because he looks just like an average guy. He's not like,
very unassuming.
yeah, he's not huge, extremely ripped, but his athleticism is off the charts. And you see it when he's splitting DBs, running away from the defense, catching a ball up the middle. But going back to my previous, train of thought, every team, every offensive coordinator, their job is to scheme for their best talent,
Hmm.
right? So, like, to use this as an argument that Brock isn't what he is completely whack.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Brock had multiple OCs during his time at Georgia. He had Mike Bobo, he had Todd Monken, and not only that, defenses schemed specifically to try and take him out of the game because of how much of a threat he was. And he was successful under successful under both coordinators, and he was successful even though he was getting double teamed and schemed against. So like all of those arguments this dude made are completely ridiculous. Whether or not Brock Bowers is a future Hall of Famer, that remains to be seen. But my eye test says he will be a very productive, very good tight end in the right system. And I think system plays a lot in the NFL. Like if you are in a bad situation, you will not be successful. I don't care who you are. Look at, Bryce Young. Look at,
Yeah.
I mean, you brought him up. Trevor Lawrence. Jacksonville has been a pretty awful franchise over the last, decade, and he did get them to the playoffs, and they have last year they kind of underachieved. They were a game away from, winning the division or going to the playoffs.
Oh yeah. They
So
were
like,
up all year and then just kind of collapsed.
but yeah,
Uh,
I mean, they're still building, and I do think the criticisms on Trevor Lawrence is warranted, but I also think that, look at Peyton Manning. He set the rookie interception record, and we know how that story ended, right? So I'm not gonna, sit here and say Trevor Lawrence isn't a generational talent yet. I will still wait to finish that, book on him. I do think it hurt him early that he's in Jacksonville and not somewhere else.
well, as coach too, because Jacksonville, it wasn't. I wouldn't say 10 years, right? They went to the AFC Championship maybe 5 or 6 years ago when they were rebuilding. I remember they beat the Steelers and they ran into the Patriots and lost. They had Blake Bortles, right?
Yeah, that was
They had
kind
a
of
crazy difference, crazy defense, I should say.
yeah, that was one of those, unexpected outperforming.
Cinderella, yeah.
Like the Hawks going to the conference finals a couple years ago.
Yeah. I don't want to compare the Hawks to Jacksonville, but I guess they're in similar stances right now. Urban Meyer, that's what I was talking about. That's what I was thinking of. They say that Urban Meyer really, really hurt him in his early years in the league because my man was, chasing tail in the bars down in Jacksonville.
But I know there's no denying what Urban accomplished in the college game, but man, like I just don't understand what people see in him.
Hmm.
It's hard for me to get behind the Urban Meyer train. I mean, he inherited a great program at Florida. He inherited a great
Was
program.
Florida football like they weren't the toast that they were when he was there or before him?
Oh yeah, Steve Spurrier in
Oh, that's right. They did have Spurrier. Did they have a national title already?
yeah,
Okay.
but
All right.
Urban did win a
Scratch that.
few.
Yeah, he did more than one. Yeah.
He did win a few, and then he won at Ohio State. Like I said, there's no denying what the record
He's
says,
had
but
success. Yeah.
he's also inherited very good situations, and he has capitalized on those. But he's also come with a lot of controversy and a lot of
Yeah.
off the field stuff that, I mean, you still hear stories of like certain things that Urban Meyer said to players, and I'm like, in any other situation, in any other career, like you're either fired, in jail, or the person you're talking to absolutely lights you up.
Yeah. Especially some of the guys he had, but birds of a feather flock together, man. They came together for a common cause, but they came together, from from a place of well, it's not something that's too disparaging. I don't know. They enjoyed the circus that was around them. Let's say that.
Yeah. I haven't watched it, but maybe I'll check it out. But there's that Netflix docu
I
series.
started it. It actually seems really good,
Yeah,
but I haven't finished yet.
I did watch the one on his murderer that he covered up. No, I'm just kidding. He did not.
Aaron Hernandez.
The Aaron Hernandez story is tragic and very interesting at the same time.
Is that on Netflix?
It was. I don't know if it is still, but
No, I didn't
yeah,
catch that one.
yeah. Coaches, they can't be with their players 24/7. They can't be responsible for everything that their players
Yeah.
do. But I do think that you can't take away all of the culpability off off Urban Meyer for the things that transpired during his time in Florida and the things with Aaron Hernandez and some of the other players.
Yeah. I imagine there's a lot of signs of things that are going on that someone in his position, being as close as he was to those young men, probably should have seen. Or no? Did they talk about that in the Aaron Hernandez? Not to go too far off, but
Yeah, I think they touch on it briefly. Just that there were obvious signs that he was um, needing some help, and because of the success on the field, things just got swept under the rug or overlooked. So,
yeah. Mm. I digress. We digress.
yes, sir.
Um, let's just go straight into baseball, man. There's been a lot of baseball news. I actually went down to the Battery. We're talking about that Battery experience, the last pod we did, and how amazing it is. So I took the fam down there, and we brought a wagon, and we brought snacks and drinks for the kids, and me and Brittany went down on a 6-pack of brews. We ordered Anticos, and we sat out there in the Georgia Power Pavilion on the lawn with our folding chairs and a giant sleeping bag, and we had a time, man. It was just good. It was just a good time out there. Like, kids were running around. They actually got to get into the fountain. It got that warm. So we'll definitely be doing that again. But at one point, I was going to the bathroom and I ended up going over to Einstein's. And I'm hearing the guys out there talking. They're sitting there there's a bar outside of Einstein's, right? They're sitting there talking. They're talking about Spencer Strider. And he says, "Yeah, Spencer's gonna have to have Tommy Johns." I was like, "What? Really?" He was like, "Yeah." So I went and looked. That's has not since been confirmed, but it also hasn't been really denied. He's just in a waiting period to see what the extent of the injury is. Um, but it's scary stuff, man. To have one of the best young players in baseball, somebody that we were looking for a lot of success out of, and to contribute to our run to another chip, to hear that he may potentially be down for a year and change is not good news.
No, it's quite tragic, in my
Almost
opinion.
devastating.
Yeah. I'm a big Spencer Strider fan, so it hurts, I think, a little bit more. And, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit, but I don't know, the way things have kind of transpired over the short, season so far. You
Mhm.
had a stretch of games where I think in 3 or 4 games we allowed 24 runs.
Yeah,
We won them,
we
but
did win them.
that's not going to be sustainable. I don't think it's going to be sustainable. It did bite us against the Mets in game 1 this week. Almost bit us last night. We watched a 6-run lead just evaporate in the 8th, 7th, 8th. Yeah, 7th and 8th inning.
Yeah, it was about.
Um so yeah, the news about Spencer Strider I think is extremely concerning. I am lobbying AA as much as possible to just go out and get something to help fortify that rotation. Freed has not looked like Freed until what, inning 4, 5 in his
Mhm.
second start. He started to settle down a little bit, but his ERA is like 18 right now. I mean, it's god awful. I think he got a little screwed in his first outing, so I want to give him a little bit of a pass. Um, some terrible missed strike calls that extended the inning for him that ultimately got him taken out of the first. And
Mhm.
then he had an opportunity to get out of trouble, and he made the right pitch. He got the ground ball, but he threw it away, trying to turn the double play, and it ended up in 2 runs.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, he's had a rough start. I think, fingers crossed he'll get it together. Chris Sale has looked very good. Like, I'm very
A lot of
grateful.
strikeouts. Yeah.
Very grateful for, how he's performed early. Charlie Morton, he's been okay, but that's really all you expected, right? Like,
He got cranked one game. He actually had a really good game, and then he had a bad game. He gave up like 4 runs in I think
that
it was the
was
fourth, so he's about to come out, right? But
that was Monday, and he gave up, I think, a 3-run home run to Nimmo,
mhm.
and that pretty much killed it. And then the bullpen didn't help him.
It sucks to lose to sorry teams, right? We swept in a high scoring fashion. We swept the NL champions from last year, right? And then
Took 2 out of
the
3 in Philly.
in Philly, and then the Mets come to town, and they had just won their first game like the day before, and it's Hank Aaron night. They got the 750 on the field. Brian Kemp is out there with Hank Aaron's wife and all these former Braves, and they lose.
to
the
the
relief
max.
pitching has been. I mean, it's been. I gave some optimism to it towards the beginning of the season, right when we preseason really. I thought Tyler Massett coming back would be good. He's gotten whacked a couple times. He's been out there. Um, the new addition that we got that pitched yesterday, he's looked pretty good. The was it Lopez?
Yeah.
Rafael Lopez? Yeah, he actually had a really good outing that they almost blew. The relief almost blew. So no, we need to get AA on the phone. I mean, we know how this podcast works, so we brought him up. They'll trade tomorrow. One thing though is with that trade, I don't know when we would do it just because it's not sustainable for the season. You definitely don't want to go into October with the pitching staff that we currently have. Um, but I think allowing a little more losses to rack up for some of these losers around the league will allow not for us. I don't want losses at all, but for the losers around the league who may just throw in the towel. Right, they got a lot less ground to stand on if they're calling it quits because they're 3-17 versus
It's
like the Mets are now. It's just so early, and everyone's going to value their players a lot more right now. So waiting to closer to the trade deadline may benefit us, but we'll see how that shakes out.
yeah, I don't see anyone throwing in the towel for a while. I mean, it's a 162 game season. You won't see teams really starting to do that until after the All-Star break. And I think if we wait that long, you know, we're gonna not be where we want to
The
be.
Mets are still in our division, right? The Marlins look terrible. They're already selling. Not because they're losing, just because they're going. Looks like they're going into full rebuild. Um, Obviously, we got to worry about the Phillies, but if we have half a season to push out further, I mean, maybe we don't even want the division at this point. The last 2 years that we had it and had those games off, it seemed like it bit us a little bit.
We want the division. Pride wants the division.
I want a championship, and if that means no division, I'm taking it.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
They're not, but it's just that the way that the playoffs are set up right now,
It's
it is
certain.
advantageous to have the rest, but the team that's coming in there is coming in on a high, man. Guaranteed every time.
Yeah, I mean the statistics history has shown in a small sample that the teams that had the buys were at a disadvantage. Houston
Yeah,
was the sole outlier that actually advanced, but then they ran into a buzzsaw in the you know
the
future
Rangers.
World Series champion Texas Rangers. So yeah,
Hmm.
I hear you. But I don't think they operate with that mentality. I think the team operates with we want to win the division first, and then second we want to win the World Series. It's
They're
World
also
Series.
money. They're money smart though,
Yeah,
right? So I mean, if that's what it's coming to, is just waiting a little bit longer while you have one of the most potent offenses in baseball. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe you like to work.
I thought it was a really interesting. So the game tonight got postponed, but they called up Alan Winans to start tonight and
I haven't even heard
replace.
that name before.
Oh, he pitched last year. So interestingly enough, we used 16 different starters last year, and we
Hmm.
won 104 games. So take that as you will. But Alan Winans started a couple last year. I mean, he did okay. The the travesty is that Spencer Strider won't. I think he pitched 32 games last year and he won 20 of them. So like
Hmm.
our you know by far
Strongest.
best arm
Yeah.
is the one that's hurt. But I did find it interesting that we went with Winans and not AJ Smith-Shawver or Bryce Elder or even Hurston Waldrop. I
One
don't know.
trip. Yeah.
As the next man up, or even Darius Vines. So I mean, we definitely have arms. We definitely have options. It's just when evaluating those, it has to be the sum of the parts because you're going to get a mixed bag with all of them. You're going to get a good outing here and there, but you're not going to get the consistency that was Spencer Strider
You're
from
not.
any one of them, right? So
Is there one of them that you would give the opportunity to though? Because throwing somebody in there for one game or giving them 2 starts, I don't really think that's enough, right? I feel like they did that with Darius Vines last year. He got in there, and it may have been because someone came back from injury, and he might have got whacked too. I think he had a really good game, but then he might have got a little shellacked that next one. But if you're gonna give somebody a shot that hasn't had it before, I think it has to be a decent shot, right? Give them 4 or 5 starts.
well, the only name that I mentioned that has not pitched in the majors is Hurston, and that's
Mm,
because he was a draft pick last year. Um,
yeah,
so I don't know. I'm not, a scout or an expert in
you're not.
major league baseball player development.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know if it hurts a player's psyche more to come in and have to struggle through some things in the pros, or if you let them, you know, age and kind of grow through the minor league system so that when they get the opportunity, they're, already a bit seasoned. I don't know
yeah,
which one's worse because I could see the argument that you don't want to throw AJ Smith-Shawver out there or Hurston out there because you want them, like, you think they're going to be one of your frontline guys in the near future. You don't want to spoil their development by throwing them into the fire and having them kind of fail to some degree.
yeah. No, I
So,
can see that.
but yeah, I think going and giving some of those guys spot starts here and there, there's nothing wrong with it. We did it last year, but we need a consistent arm to replace Spencer Strider, which, he's pretty irreplaceable from a 1-to-1 standpoint.
Yeah,
The one name, everyone brings up that I did see an article that basically said this will never happen for the Braves. And I don't really fully understand it, but Trevor Bauer, like, he's out there.
mm,
Like, I understand he had some pretty serious allegations against him, but all the allegations, were brought to light as false.
yeah,
There are some pretty backhanded things that happened during that whole scenario, and I think he deserves a second shot. Um, he appears from the games he played against major league teams, whether it was for the Japanese league team or the
yeah.
Mexican league team. He performed well against current MLB talent. So I definitely think he has the talent.
He was the man before, the situation.
Hello, everyone. It's your boy MB. Unfortunately, we lost the audio track for the remainder of that Braves discussion. But don't worry, we will pick up where we left off in next week's episode. So you'll have to just come back to see where that conversation was going. With that, I hope you enjoyed the rest of the episode. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, press that thumbs up, comment down below what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like us to talk about. And we appreciate you being here. Peace.